This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez with part two of our discussion about the condition of labor in this country 50 years after Dr. Martin Luther King went to Memphis, Tennessee, to march with sanitation workers. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, Bill, Lucy, we were talking about the condition of workers, not only back then in Memphis, but today, as you were remarking about these strikes that have spread across the country in recent weeks, especially of teachers in a variety of states. Your sense of the lessons from the 1968 and the Memphis sanitation workers that the workers of today would benefit from?
Well, I think what the sanitation workers of 1968 did was brought to the attention of America the need for workers to have a voice in the decisions that affect their work life, that dealt with their wages, their hours, their conditions of employment. Right now, you have low-wage workers, the fight for 15, fast food workers, poultry workers, food processing workers, all of those who are at the low end of the economic scale having to struggle just to survive in this rapidly changing economy. You now have middle-class workers. There was a point when school teachers considered themselves middle-income workers. They are now having to fight to demand justice in their wages and in their benefits. And this is a situation that's going to grow across the country as the gap between the super wealthy and those who need. It is a continuous battle between the greedy and the needy. And people recognize that they have to stand up and speak for themselves.
I wanted to go back 50 years ago to that moment in the church where Dr. Martin Luther King spoke. Hundreds of people packed into this church. And H.B. Crockett, after we play this, since you were there, we wanted to get your response.
That's the question before you tonight. Yes. Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to my job? Not if I stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to all of the hours that I usually spend in my office every day and every week as a pastor. The question is not if I stop to help this man in need, what will happen to me? The question is, if I do not stop to help the sanitation workers, what will happen to them? That's the question.
So talk about how you felt that night, H.B. Crockett. And then when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, I may not get there with you.
That was the thing I couldn't understand. I mean, I didn't want to hear that part. So it looked like he saw the end coming, it looked like to me. When he spoke that word. But it was a packed house, though, that day. It was a packed house. I mean, packed. I mean, you couldn't walk. There was a lot of folk there that night, a lot of them. And I was there, I was one of them. And I got home and heard the news, so I didn't know what to say. I know he did a good. He spoke good that night. I know that.
He was sick that night, right? He wasn't feeling well, and Ralph Abernathy called him and said, "You got to get here. You got to say something." He said, "Can't you give the speech?" He said, "I'm not enough for them. You've got to come here." Was that true, H.B. Crockett?
Yes, ma'am. It was true. We need some help. We need some help bad. Finally came, gave us some help.
Did you feel like establishing AFSCME when you ultimately won, getting that local of the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees made a difference for you as a sanitation worker?
Yeah, it made a whole lot different to me. We got to sell the strike. That's the main thing. We got a chance to sell the strike so we can all go back to work.
Amy, one of the key parts of that settlement was that the men achieved benefits that they never had before. Aside from the recognition of the union and the union's ability to finance its activity, but you got a grievance procedure, a clearly defined process for settling problems, promotional opportunities, training opportunities. You got non-discrimination provisions where discrimination was rampant across the workforce prior to this. And it was not a perfect situation, but it was substantially better than it had been in the past.
And the situation in Memphis today for the African-American workers and the general African-American community?
Well, Memphis needs a lot of help. We have digressed. It would be less than honest to say there have not been progress, but there's a lot more that's necessary for the workforce that's here, both in the public sector as well as the private sector. Workers are entitled to the right to organize and to bargain collectively around wages, hours, and benefits of employment. You should not have the wide gaps between private sector workers who have the right to organize and public sector workers who are denied that effective right.
Today, there's an ongoing fight for $15 an hour. Memphis is cited as one of the lowest in the nation when it comes to getting wages, particularly for African Americans. Bill Lucey, your thoughts on the kind of organizing and what this $15 an hour campaign has meant around the country?
Well, the struggle for 15 is clearly a struggle that has to be waged. But let's not assume that $15 an hour, we have reached the millennium. You know, $15 an hour is $30,000 a year. Take taxes and other kinds of things off the top of that, and you're really down to the $15,000 to $16,000 net spendable income that workers will take home. We've clearly got a nation that has the capacity to pay better wages, pay better benefits, and these workers on the low end of the economic scale are entitled to be a participant in that. Sanitation workers who would tell you that today life is better than it was in 1968, but it is not the millennium. They need more. You cannot raise a family off of the wages that are earned now. Bargain is the key to that. Nobody assumes they're going to be given anything, but they are entitled to bargain over the value of the work that they do.
And Bill Lucey, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the current situation of the Trump administration, especially in regard to labor. Obviously, we're waiting for now the Supreme Court with a conservative majority to rule on a key case that's very important to organized labor. But in general, how the Trump administration has dealt with its appointments to the National Labor Relations Board, to its policies that directly affect organized labor.
The Trump administration is an anti-labor, anti-union administration. Their basic policies have been to stymie the role of unions, to prevent unions from effectively representing workers as the National Labor Relations Act, described for them to do. And particularly in the public sector, the Janus case is a clear effort to eliminate the role of unions in the public sector, to silence their voice, to make it more difficult for them to effectively represent their members. And the Trump administration gives you lots of bells and whistles, but at the end of the day, they are not committed to having labor or labor unions play the effective role that they should be playing.
H.B. Crockett, what are your thoughts today on President Trump?
I think we need a good president. That's what I think.
You like him?
I don't think he's one of them.
You say that again?
Huh? I said I don't think he's no good president. I can say that.
And Bill Lucey,
I think.
Oh no, go ahead, HB.
I don't think he's no good president, but he's in there now. We got to deal with what we got. But he ain't no good president, I don't think.
And Bill Lucey.
Well, Amy, over time, we have had, bad presidents, but none who has approached the job as this one does, to use the divisive tactics to divide people up, to to demonize various ethnic groups, to make it clear that the so-called "Make America Great Again" is the approach. I just totally disagree with that. He has got to be the worst president we have had in the history of this nation, and we've had some bad ones. But the argument that, well, everybody who voted for Trump is a racist, I don't buy that. I do buy, however, every racist who voted for Trump. Our view is that what we need is a government that brings people together, not divides them up, and use that division as a basis for making life worse for everyone.
And final thoughts on, well, you're both there in Memphis. H.B. Crockett, you live there, retired from the Sanitation Department after well over half a century. And Bill Lucy, you're there for the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. Can you talk about what the climate is like right now? Like, what are the events that are happening in these few days where people gather from all over the country to remember Dr. King?
Well, the principal program, Amy, has been sponsored by the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, along with the Church of God in Christ. And it is to build a cadre of people who wants to build a better country. There will be training programs preparing people for issue organization and mobilization, really to talk to people about the important issues that face us as a society. Health care for all, a decent job for all, the ability to take a look at the problems affecting our communities. And Memphis has this set of problems like many other cities across the country. And there will be a real effort to try and mobilize people to go back to their cities and their counties and states and carry on the same kind of work that will help build a better nation.
Any final words, H.B. Crockett, as you remember Dr. King 50 years ago? You, in those last 24 hours, were among, well, the few in this country who saw Dr. King.
We all had retirement, but we don't have it. I wish that, though. Nobody never get that retirement. We get that retirement thing. We got just Social Security now. We need that retirement thing. All of us need that, but we ain't got it. I don't know why they don't give us that. I worked all that many years, and they ain't got no sanitation, ain't got no retirement plan. It's got a Social Security plan.
Well, we will leave it there, and I thank you both for being with us. H.B. Crockett participated in the 1968 march in Memphis. He was a sanitation worker for over 50 years, carried those signs, "I am a man," was there in the last speech of Dr. Martin Luther King, April 3rd, 1968. The next day, Dr. King would be gunned down. And Bill Lucy, thanks so much for being with us, former Secretary-Treasurer of AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees. Thank you for joining us from Memphis, Tennessee. To see part one of our discussion, go to democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Thank you.